Welcome to Roll Call, a 126th Air Refueling Wing podcast of the Illinois Air National Guard at Scott Air Force Base. I'm your host, Technical Sergeant Brian Ellison. The Roll Call podcast focused on people, mission, and community. Want to say hello to our deployers. Coming up, our first guest from the 108th Air Refueling Wing Squadron, the Chief Boomer, Chief Master Sgt. Latimer. Coming up this month is the Boom Selection Board for current military members and civilians. Boom Operator, that's an In-Flight Refueling Specialist. Selection Board is for Drill Status Guardsmen. The board is tentatively scheduled for February 20th at 09. Applications are due by close of business next Wednesday. That's February 17th. Applications need to have a cover letter. A resume must include 3 references, 3 letters of recommendation, which may come from your references, a minimum ASVAB score of 55 in the general category. See Recruiting Facebook for more information on the board and what else you need, or call the recruiting office at 618-222-5701. What I just listed is not everything that you need, so make sure you go to Recruiting's Facebook page or call the recruiting office at 618-222-5701. It is cold outside. My Fiat's transmission did not want to work this morning. It took like 30 minutes for the transmission to work. The transmission, I was worried about my car started no problems. But I get in and try to put it into gear to take my daughter to school this morning, and it wouldn't go. It stayed, I don't know, it would go through, but it would say manual transmission not working or something like that. 30 minutes after letting the car warm up and moving it the gears a few times, it finally connected, but I was a little worried there for a minute. In the case of inclement weather, which you never know we might have over the next 2 weeks, you can call the Scott Air Force Base Information Hotline. That is 618-256-7232, or check the Scott Air Force Base Facebook page or the 126th Air Refueling Wing Facebook page.
Hi, my name's Senior Airman Gregory Goder. I'm part of the 126 Comptroller flight, and I'm a financial manager here. My day-to-day job would be, I'm an accounting technician basically, so I'm in charge of all the squadron's purchases, and I make sure they hit the books correctly. What I like most about being in the 126 is I'm an AGR out here, so I work out here full-time. With that, I get a bunch of opportunities. Traveling is probably my favorite opportunity. I've been to a bunch of cool places like Washington State, which was the first time I've ever been there. I also play on the base softball team, so I get to travel with them quite a bit as well. I joined the Air National Guard because after college, I had a couple jobs I didn't really like, and I wanted to have an impactful career and make a difference on my community. I chose the 126 because I could pretty much stay around all my friends and family and still be part of the Air National Guard. I joined the Comptroller flight because my bachelor's in business management, and it kind of just fell hand in hand with working with finances. But one huge benefit I've been taking advantage of is my full-time employment as an AGR. As an AGR, I get active duty pay, benefits, and everything that goes along with being active duty, but I get to stay home.
Hi, we are the 126 recruiting team. I'm Master Sergeant Heather Wilde, recruiting flight chief.
I'm Technical Sergeant Richard Olson, production recruiter. To learn more about career training with the 126, give us a call at 618-222-5701.
But wait, there's more. Give us a call in the next 5 minutes and you could qualify for 4 years of free college tuition.
Joining us in the studio from the 108th Air Refueling Squadron, In-Flight Refueling Program Manager, Chief Master Sgt. Latimer, the Chief Boom. Welcome to the podcast. You're the first member from the 108th to come in on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
We have coming up, so you are the chief boom, and we have coming up the boom board, which you kind of head up.
Correct. So basically, on drill weekend, February, I believe it's the 20th.
Yes, sir.
So we'll have a boom selection board. So I'm in the process of receiving applicants,
right,
their resumes and stuff, a packet. So we'll get those and we'll vet those through a process. The boom board will,
right,
by interviews and stuff, and they'll make the best selections based off merit and a person's history and positions that we have to fill on the manning dock. So there's a number of things that we look at when we select boom operators.
Yeah, I noticed the applications. I've got this right here. Letters of recommendation,
Correct.
ASVAB,
Right.
things like that. Of your general score 55.
Correct.
If you turn all these things in, does this mean that does this mean you automatically are going to go in front of the board, or you're looking for other things too?
Right. So a packet is just a part of the process.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily mean you will be given an opportunity to present yourself.
Right.
But this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a selection.
Okay. So what's that board process like? When you say go in front of a board, does that mean not me personally, but someone puts their blues on,
right,
answers questions?
Right. So the board will be comprised of an OIC, which
Okay.
is normally a field grade or higher.
Okay.
And then I try to put on there a senior NCO and people who are going to be in the unit and working with these people in the foreseeable future. So kind of like a Master Sergeant, Tech Sergeant,
Sure.
Somebody that's going to be around for a while. So why not put somebody on the board and make selections about people that you're going to be working with in the future?
Right.
So, I don't feel that, although I am more than willing to do the boards, I'm kind of trying to take myself out of the process and allow people to make decisions that are going to affect their future and the people that they work with. So, and once they go through the process, the board process for each applicant will come in. They will first of all, they will review the packets for each applicant before they comes in, and then when they come in, then they'll go through the interview process of uniform of the day.
Okay.
Just basically saying, to loosen them up, tell us about yourself, normal boardisms.
Right.
And then we'll go into like a formatted amount of questions that we would ask each applicant just to make sure we get the same question. And, we'll get various responses depending on your background and what you do. So, and then once that takes place and the board is satisfied with the questions and that they are going to ask, they ask the applicant to leave, and they will kind of formulate their opinions and give a yay or a nay, and then they'll bring the applicant back in, and we'll let them know that we'll be sending out a letter as to whether you've been selected or not.
Oh, okay. What's that? What do you guys? Is there anything particular that you're looking for in a board applicant?
Well, ideally, we would like people who are flying-centric minded.
Sure.
Understand, aerodynamics and stuff of that nature. If you're good with aircraft,
Okay.
Mechanics, aircraft mechanics, the maintenance personnel, crew chiefs, they're ideal for being boom operators because they understand all of the various systems that are on the jet that we have to learn when we go to school. Well, they already know them.
Oh.
Like hydraulics or electronics or pneumatics. They already understand all of those systems.
Oh.
So it's just a matter of them learning our particularities in the flying world because the systems they already know. So now they have to learn how to do weight and balance, which is basically a numbers crunch where we kind of balance the jet. You have a particular space on the aircraft that you have to be able to balance what we call CG, center of gravity. You have to be able to balance that aircraft depending on the numbers game you play, depending on how much fuel, the basic weight of the aircraft, how much baggage we may have, how many passengers we may have. So we calculate all of that stuff, and it spits out a number. That number will let us know exactly where the fulcrum is in the jet. So we're trying to do a balancing act with all of this stuff that's on the jet.
Wow, I thought it was like a video game for you guys.
No, I wish.
You were up there with a joystick and you
wish.
were like, nee.
Right.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and that's part of learning, stuff like that, like a crew chief will know the systems, but they would have to go learn that, stuff like that in school or, air refueling or or in particular, we have our different AFIs that we have to learn.
Sure.
And general knowledge stuff. So, yeah.
What? So, wow. I did not know that was.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like something an officer would do. It almost. I mean, to me, it almost sounds like.
Well, it's not as hard as it sounds. Once you go through the process and you learn, and we teach you or you're taught the formulas in school, it's pretty simple. It's not that complicated.
So what all? You mentioned it a little bit, but what all duties do boomers do?
Okay.
Well, we'll start maybe just while they're flying.
Okay, so our primary job is to do air refueling.
Okay.
So that's our primary job. So we are there to kind of like a glorified gas station attendant in the sky, if that's how you want to look at it. So air refueling is our primary mission. In addition to that, we also do cargo hauls. So we do a lot of cargo runs, or load masters, as most people will be able to identify with. We also are passenger hauls, so we do passenger hauls. So if you want to take like med group from here to Kadena, well, we load their jet up with their luggage and their equipment and their personnel, and we basically carry them from point A to point B. So passenger hauls.
Wow.
So,
Okay. And then on the ground is when you do all that math stuff.
Correct. Yes, that's all kind of pre-planned. You have an initial. Once we do what we call mission, we do our mission brief. So it's a briefing before you actually go fly. So every air crew member or crew should be doing a pre-brief before they go fly. So you get together. It's basically a guide that AMC puts out, and you have to go through different types of scenarios or categories or emergency procedures. We have to brief different data if you're going to refuel a C-17 versus a C-5 or F-16. So there's different data that we have to look at, and we have to brief every time we go fly. So it's basically an overall plan about what we're going to do as a crew and how we're going to execute.
You talked about aerodynamics. Where does that fit into?
So when on the boom itself, you have rotavators.
Yeah.
And so those rotavators basically control the boom depending on, we have what we call a control stick.
Sure.
So that basically controls the movement of the boom, and the rotavators, they shift depending on the angle of the boom that we maneuver. And so those are some of the aerodynamics, and you can actually slow the jet down or you can speed the jet up. So depending on the angle that you have the boom at.
Wow, those rotavators are that powerful that they can, because they
Correct,
don't look
yes.
very big.
Right, yeah, they can. It can slow the jet down just by a little bit, maybe by 1 or 2 knots, but it's not anything significant. But it can slow it down just a tad bit. And also, when the receivers, depending on the type of receiver it is, like if it's a heavy aircraft like a C-5, C-17, we have what we call a bow wave. So as the receiver gets closer, they're pushing air towards you. So the rotavators and the boom, they're going to float up, and eventually it'll neutralize itself out. And then you can eventually affect the contact into the receptacle that they have.
Wow.
Yeah.
My boss and I were talking about this the other day. Can you refuel C-130s?
Yes, correct. Yes.
You can refuel
those are the
C-130s?
Hertz, yes.
Oh.
So you have the MCs and the ACs, but basically they're receptacles at the top of the aircraft, and there's different data that we research or we brief before we go do a C-130.
Oh, okay.
It's at a slower speed. A lot of them, I believe, are at a lower altitude.
Okay.
But yes, we do C-130s as well. We used to do, when I was in another unit, we would go down to Herbert Field, and we would do like a lot of C-130s at night, and we would do what we call toboggan. So that's where you're connected in flight, but you're descending at the same time that you're air refueling and connected to a lower altitude.
Wow.
Right.
That's
cool. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. If somebody makes it through the boomer board, the training, it looks like there's a lot of training involved in that.
Correct. So once I receive the packets from different applicants, and you go through the board, and if you are lucky enough to get selected, then there's a medical process that you have to go through. Once you go through the medical process, then we get you school dates. So initially, you would go through what we call BBOC. That's Basic Boom Operators Course. Okay. That's basically about 2 weeks where you just kind of learn, I'm sorry, not BBOC, Aircrew Fundamentals. Aircrew Fundamentals is the first thing that you go through. Okay. That's just basically learning about flying. So that's about a 2-week process, right? And then after that, then you go to BBOC, Basic Boom Operators Course, and then that's where you're going to learn about your specific airframe that you're going to be going to, because we have different airframe, air refueling fleets in the inventory. So we have the 135, you have the KC-10, and you have the KC-46.
Oh.
So depending on your specific airframe, you will go and learn those specific things about that particular aircraft and airfield. So BBOC, Basic Boom Operators course. So you would go through that for a couple of weeks, and then after that, then you would go through what we call BIQ, Basic Initial Qualification, and that's basically where you go to Altus for 2 months, and you kind of reinforce those academics of what you learned in BBOC.
Okay.
And you get a little bit more in depth into stuff, and then you do simulators, and that's becoming a big thing in the military, simulators and training on those. And then once you do the simulators, then you go to the flight line and you get a couple of flights in, and then after you get a couple of flights in, you do a check ride.
Oh, okay.
That's basically an evaluation,
right?
To say that, okay, let's fortify everything that you've learned. And so you're going to have an evaluator to fly with you, and he's going to critique you on everything you've learned.
Wow.
So, and then once that's done, then you could potentially come back to home station, or you may go to survival school, SEER school at Fairchild, and that's about, well, it used to be 3 weeks. I think it is roughly 10, 12-ish days now. So you do a water part and you'll do a land part. So, and then once you're done with that, then you would come back to your home station, and you would get, right now, I think we have currently 40 seasoning days, or MESS days, what they call them. Mission Essential Skills Training Days. So you'll get 140 days to learn our nuclear mission, to finish any ground training that you might have to do, like chem, ground chem. You might have to do weapons squall, CBT, stuff like that.
Sure.
And then once that's done, you sum it all up, and you do a briefing before the wing commanders on our nuclear piece to make sure that you understand. You have conventional, which is just regular airfield, and you have nuclear, which is a whole nother type of mission set. So once you brief the commanders on the nuclear mission, and that you understand that and what we're doing with that, then you become what we call MCT, Mission Certified Trained. So now you're complete. We're going to sign you off to say that you are a certified boom operator and you're good to go for air refueling. We trust that you've learned your training, and we've validated your training. So that's basically kind of the whole process. And that whole process takes about 9 months in total.
I mean, heck, if you're looking for a job, maybe for, yeah. it's a great job, but you better be prepared, I guess, to give away 9 months of your time.
Right, 9 months of your time. And then in addition to that, and then once we do get certified and signed off, and you're, whether it's a pilot or a boom, once you're trained up and you're on your own, well, I guess I shouldn't say on your own, because we always work as crews.
Sure.
But we're just saying individually, we understand that you know what you're doing.
Right. So,
and then once that's done, then it's basically make your money, man, whether it's going TDYs, whether we're like now we have Poland. That's a big thing that we're doing. That's our sister unit. So we're going over there to support Poland in their flying operations. Different types of TDYs. We have coronets where we do, it may be a fighter drag to Kadena, or we might go eastbound to Marone. We do fighter drag. Those are called coronets. Or we may do a business effort. A business effort is a type of TDY where you may go somewhere for a week. You're contracted to go somewhere for a week, and we might go to Dyess Air Force Base for a week and refuel B-1s.
Oh, nice.
So, to get them, get training out of them, or get their training spun up. And then we just have our local sorties that we go out and we pre-plan with different units around the local area. Or
right.
We try to do it mostly in the Midwest area, but, we go outside that range just a little bit sometimes. Sometimes we might fly as far west as New Mexico, to refuel some F-22s out of Holloman Air Force Base. So,
wow.
So we normally try to stay around the Midwest area and try to plan the sorties anywhere from 2 to 4 hours ish.
Okay.
So yeah.
Are you still get up there and refuel?
Yeah, I try to do it as much as I can. Being a chief, my focus and my job has shifted a little bit, so I don't get to go out and fly as much as I used to.
Right.
I'm more so into the role of mentoring and being a facilitator. I'm the RA as well, the resource advisor, so I deal with a lot of money and budget stuff, and just trying to put different people in leadership positions to try to get the best potential, get out of them the best potential that I can for the unit, for the sake of the unit.
You were talking about simulators earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How what's that? The advantage of that, and do you see advantages in simulators?
Absolutely. So basically, with simulators, so we have two types of sims that we use as boom operators. On the guard units, you have what we call a BOSS, boom operator simulator system.
Okay.
And on the active duty units, like here, Fairchild, I believe McDill,
Okay.
at March Air Force Base. They have what we call a BOUST, a boom operator weapons systems trainer, which we have one here over at the sim building.
Oh, that's nice.
So basically what that does is, like if you pull somebody straight off the street, you can go into a simulator and say, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. So you can put them in the boom pod, and you can let them see what a F-16 looks like, what a B-1 looks like, what a C-17 or C-5, and this is what you're going to be doing. So we can go down there and we can let them do air refueling, and we can instruct them on how to, affect the contact, and they can see the dynamics of the boom and how we fly it around, and just the geographics of the landscape that we see while we're up in the air. So it's nice to be able to show somebody what you're going to be doing before you actually go and do it. And it's beneficial to the member as well, because they get basically a bigger picture and understanding of, okay, wow, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is cool, and it's a good recruiting tool as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a lot of fun to do.
So simulators are definitely, and it fortifies our training as well. So, for those of us who can't get up and go fly as much as we used to, okay, let's go over to the sim, and we can do refueling daytime, nighttime, and to keep proficiency on your training.
How often do you? How do you keep? Is there an amount of time you have to fly or be in the simulator to keep your
proficiency?
Your proficiency.
So proficiency is basically, so we have different flight levels. We have like A, B, C, D, depending on how long you're flying. There's timetables are associated with different flight levels, training levels, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And based off of your experience level, that dictates and drive training. It dictates and drive the amount of training that you have to do depending on what your experience level is.
Okay.
Like, so by me being a flight level A, I'm pretty much high at the top for experience level, so I don't fly as much as somebody who, let's say, just came out of school and they're a C level.
Right.
Or so depending on your training level, it dictates and drives the amount of currency that you are supposed to do on a semester basis, which is every 6 months.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You mentioned the nuclear mission. I don't know how much you can share about that. How is that different from when you're doing
the day-to-day mission?
Yeah.
So that is a
yeah. I'm sure that's
a classified topic, but basically, air refueling. At the end of the day, air refueling is what we do.
Okay.
It's just a different type of air refueling is air refueling, just like driving the car is driving the car.
Right.
But there's just other things that go along with it.
Okay.
Basically.
No problems. And the boom operator is for DSG people. That's the traditional guardsmen.
Right. Drill status guardsmen.
Drill status guardsmen. What is their mission? How is their mission different from full-timers?
It's the same.
Oh, it is?
Yep, we all train to the same level, whether you're pilot, boom. When I say we're trained like MCT, mission certification training, that means me as a full-timer, I should have a DSG that can go out there and do the exact same job as I'm able to do. I may have a little bit more experience at different things, but the mission itself, you should be able to complete the mission.
So, I mean, they're pulling weekends like everybody else.
Correct. So it's a little bit different for us as a DSG and being air crew. So you do have your traditional, 2 weeks a year, every weekend, but we get what we call an additional AFTPs, annual flight training periods. So basically you get an additional 72 of those, and that's just thinking of it as a way to come out and do extra drills. But we just use them for flights, or we can use them for ground. You can use them to do ground training, come out and do CBTs, or you can come out and do, chem training, or you can come out and shoot the gun, or, whatever ground training you might have. So basically, that's what those are for.
What do you like most about being a boomer?
Honestly, I like the camaraderie with the crews. and I love to travel. I mean, just being able to go and refuel in different countries, seeing different cultures, getting out there. I think that's one of the best part about our job is that we get to travel, and you get to travel for a couple of days, and then you get to come home. So it's kind of like for a DSG, you have your full-time job, and you come out here, this is your part-time job. But for most of them, they kind of look at it as, oh, okay, this is my getaway from my real world, adventures in life, and I can go do my military job and go to Germany for a week, and refuel or do a cargo haul or whatever the mission is that we may have. And then, you're going to Germany for a week per se, and then you come back and you go to a regular job. So it's a little bit different. So I love the traveling aspect of it, and just seeing the different countries, different cultures. I just love it. It's a good job. I think it's the best enlisted job in the military, being what we call a CEA, a career enlisted aviator.
Yeah, that would be. It's pretty close to public affairs, I would say. It sounds like it's neck and neck. The only thing that would be better is being able to go to Germany a lot, because my tattoo artist is in he's in Frankfurt, and he's got a shop in Kaiserslautern.
Okay.
I could get more. I could get more tattoos.
Kaiserslautern, right there by Ramstein. Absolutely.
I know.
Yep,
I was full time in Germany, in Frankfurt and Mannheim.
Okay.
Back when I was at AFN.
Oh, you're very familiar with it then.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Love that place. I almost wish I could have just stayed there and lived there, but I got family here and kind of miss them.
Gotcha.
What I mean? Yeah.
Gotcha.
You had talked about. Let's talk about mentorship. What's
Okay.
how do you try to mentor your airmen?
Okay, so that's a good question. So mentorship. So I'm huge on mentoring and just trying to get people to reach their full potential. I want them to aspire to be what they feel like they can, what they can be to the best of their potential. And then if I see different aspects of them as a leader or different characteristics and personalities, traits, then I will try to capitalize on that as well for the benefit of the military. So mentorship for me is, I bring my troops in, we talk about, hey, where do you want to be and how we're going to get there? And these are the steps I need you to take, and these are the things that I need you to do. So basically just laying the table out for them to be able to understand how do you get from A to Z, because when I was a young private, I used to be in the Army. So I switched over to the Air Force later on.
I saw the error of my ways too, sir.
Right. So once I got off active duty Army, I just felt like, when I was a young private, then nobody really told me how to, if I decided to stay enlisted, to go from being a private to a command sergeant major.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? From E1 to E9. So nobody told me how to do that and the steps all in between. So as these young airmen come in, and we have what we call a career training plan that we go by. But I try to get them in. I try to see, where their mindset is, what their goals and aspirations are, and where they want to be in life. And I tell everybody to aspire to be a chief, or actually, I push them to get their civilian education, because I'm like, if you're going to do this, you might as well be in it. You might as well get commissioned. So I push a lot of, especially the boom operators, I push them to get their civilian education, and I say, hey, once you do this, and you're going to be a boom operator for a couple of years, so you're going to understand all the flying aspects, cross over to be a pilot, be an officer. If you're going to get paid to do this, you might as well, be an officer, get paid really good. Right.
What's your view on minorities in leadership positions throughout the military?
For me personally, diversity brings about a different mindset, to support to whatever the commanders want to support the mission. So having minorities, when I say minorities, I don't just mean African Americans. I'm talking about, females as well. It just brings a different mindset. And when you bring different mindsets and different skill sets and different thought processes and different cultures, and present a different point of view to a commander or a leader, and then they can kind of get a holistic viewpoint of how they can organize and how we can, best support the mission. Because, sometimes 5 plus 5 doesn't always, it always equals 10, but you can say 7 plus 3 also equals 10, or 6 plus 4 also equals 10. So we can get to the same place, but if I can bring a different perspective, then we might be able to get there a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient, So that's my thing in diversity and having leadership. Having minorities in leadership positions, it just brings about a different perspective because at the end of the day, we're all here to serve.
Right.
And we're all brothers and sisters, at least in my point of view, we are. And it's about what's the best way to get the mission done. And if that means bringing someone, having somebody from a different culture in a leadership position to bring a different perspective, then, hey, more power to the military.
Right. Did you have? You had mentors, obviously.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Did you seek out maybe African Americans as mentors, or did it not matter?
No, to me it didn't matter
Okay.
because one of my best mentors, he lives in Florida right now. He's a retired boom operator, so we actually still talk to this day pretty frequently, and I still reach out to him. Whenever I have issues or questions, I'll reach out to him, as well as other chiefs, but he's my primary go-to. And so to me, it didn't matter as far as like color. Now, would I like to see people of color in more as flyers, especially as officers, or enlisted flyers? Sure, I would. But there are challenges with that at times. So although it sounds good, it's not always as easy as it sounds.
Right.
And there are different reasons for that. A lot of it is from, lack of awareness, depending on how you grew up, things you were exposed to. So, and some people have an aversion for the military. They don't want anything to do with the military. So, so it's kind of hard to get people to understand that it's not as like you think it is. It's a brotherhood or a sisterhood. We're all in the same uniform. We're all here to serve the same purpose.
Yeah, I've had people ask me, well, how is it, if I'm this way or that way, if I'm joining the military? It's we take care of each other.
Right.
We look out after each other.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, it's the uniform you're wearing.
Right. Because I'll do the same thing for you as I'll do for someone in color in the uniform.
Right.
Exact same thing. So if I lay down for him, I'm going to lay down for you too and die. So that's just my mindset.
Right. You mentioned you were in the Army. What'd you do in the Army?
Yeah, so I was airborne infantry in the Army.
Woo!
So I did 4 years airborne infantry, 2 years supply. So I did, my first duty station was Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 101st Airborne.
Oh, nice.
Yep, so I did 2 years there.
Air assault?
Air assault, correct. Yep, air assault.
Man.
So I learned to rappel a lot of helicopters, do combat loads on, Hueys and Chinooks, and Black Hawks, doing all of those great things, air assault, all things air assault. From there, I went to the DMZ, Korea.
Oh yeah.
I was up there for a year, and then from Korea, I think I was in Korea from '92 to '93, and then from '93 to '94, I was stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, 82nd Airborne. Yeah.
I don't know.
I was high strong.
You
man.
were high speed, low drag.
Yeah, I was. When I was younger, man, I just had a lot of energy. Just a lot of motivation. And I was an athlete, so doing 20-mile road marches at 2 o'clock in the morning with a 70-pound rucksack, it didn't faze me because it just didn't faze me. So you're young, you don't know any better, man. You don't know that eventually over the course of time that stuff's gonna wear on your body. You don't think about that stuff when you're young. You just go do it. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
You
yeah.
in the Army?
I was in the Army. I was artillery.
Field artillery?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't towed. I was self-propelled.
Okay.
So I was on the one. They were like, "You want to go? Airborne?" I was like, "Nope,
Yeah.
that does not sound like fun, and I don't want to jump with those guns."
I don't blame you. I was an adrenaline junkie too. So jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. A lot of my family members ask me, "What in the heck is wrong with you?" I'm like, "Hey, it's just something that I wanted to do." So yeah, so I jumped at Fort Bragg for about a year. And that was a different experience too. I saw a lot of injuries behind it, but
sure.
but when you're like 5,000 feet up in the sky, man, it's just so quiet.
Is it really?
It's so quiet. Yeah, it's so quiet, man. And but the PLFs, the parachute landing falls, that can be a little tricky if you got wind involved in that.
Sure.
Before you land, I saw a lot of people get hurt. I saw a lot of broke legs, a lot of twisted, sprung ankles. Oh yeah, knees. Yeah.
That must have helped you become a boomer then, knowing all that, falling and all that stuff.
Well, not necessarily. You talking about the airplane, jumping out of airplanes?
Jumping out of airplanes?
Not really.
Not really?
No, as a boom operator, part of that was, so I was a firefighter too in Mississippi.
Okay.
So when I started out down at the 186 Air Refueling Wing. So I was a firefighter for the city of Meridian for 3 years, and I was a firefighter on NAS, Naval Air Station Meridian, in the DOD system for 2 years. And but while I was doing all of that, I ran into one of my fellow firefighters who explained to me what a boom operator was and what we did. And he was talking about how it was this cool job, and you get to travel the world, do air refueling, see different places. I'm like, oh man, this sounds interesting. So I was already in the Army Reserves at that time, but then I switched over from Army Reserves to the Guard, which was a process all in itself. But by the time that all happened, so it took a little while. It took about 6 months. But once it was done, then I was in the clinic at the Foreign initially. And then one of my friends, again, who was a firefighter, he was explaining to me about being a boom operator. So I went over and talked to the chief boom, and I was like, hey, well, what's this thing I hear about being a boom operator? He kind of explained everything to me. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that sounds like something I might be interested in. And that same guy that I talked to that day is the same guy that I'm very good friends with and my mentor to this day.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I see that you have jump wings?
Correct.
Those are your jump wings, and you got to wear those?
I have.
Oh, that's nice.
I have jump wings and air saw wings. Yep. They wanted me to go to Ranger school. They wanted me to go to Pathfinder school. I'm like, look, I'm getting out the military. I'm getting at least out of the Army.
Right. I know that.
Yeah, because I'm
They try to keep me in at field artillery. I had my smoke, which is an E7 chief of smoke is what they call them. He's
Gotcha.
Charge of the gun or the NCOIC of the gun batteries, basically, or the platoon. He followed me into the shower one day. I'm like, Chief, I'm trying to go take a shower. You need to go to PLDC. You need to go to PLDC now.
Right.
I was like, Chief, I'm getting out.
Right.
The artillery was fun, but I'm good.
Yep. So you understand my pain. Yep.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, nah, I think I've had enough. That's gotta if I'm gonna stay. And I always said though, when I was in the Army, if I was ever going to continue an active duty career in the military, it would have to be Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found an opportunity to do that. And I took advantage of it, and here I am.
Right.
When I came up here, I came to this unit in November of 2001. So I left the 186 and came up here to the 126 as a fully qualified boom operator for family reasons. Is basically why I transferred. But yeah, I came up and I've been doing this boomer thing now for about 20 years since *99. So 22 years.
Wow.
It'll be 22 years in March.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
I've been doing the boomer thing. Yep.
That's awesome. So, at least your airborne infantry all experience had to help you with these SEER schools and stuff, right?
It did. It actually did. Yeah. It was like, I'm like, this is a joke. I'm like, really? I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah. So, yeah, coming from infantry, yeah, you get it, yeah. So, it's just a different world, going from learning how to train to basically kill people to air refueling planes in the air. So, it's just, it's a different mindset. So,
how'd you come to join the 108s?
So, when I was at the 186 Air Refueling Wing civilian-wise as a firefighter, but I was also a boom operator within the wing there. My son, I had a son that had special needs.
Oh, okay.
So we had to get to a city that had better medical facilities, and we knew Children's Hospital was up here. And plus, my mom lived up here in St. Louis anyway. So, and I kind of went to school up here a little bit on and off from here to Mississippi, back and forth.
Where'd you go to school at?
I went to, up here, it was Hazelwood West.
Okay.
Yeah.
My uncle teaches, he's at, I don't know, one of the Hazelwood middle schools.
Okay. Yeah, Hazelwood Middle School. Okay, yeah. So Hazelwood's it's a pretty decent school system.
Oh, yeah.
So I ended up coming up here, transferring from Meridian to here because at that time, my current wife, at that time, we had a special needs child, so I had to get to a place that had a better medical facility than what we were living at the time. And so my chief boom there, Eddie Michael, at the 186 Air Refueling Wing, he called up here and talked to Chief Garros, at the time, who was at the chief of the 108 Air Refueling Squadron, and they kind of talking. He's like, hey, I got a guy that's got special, circumstances, and good guy, blah blah blah, and so he made a phone call for me, and I came up and I talked to Chief Garros, and we sat down, and and he kind of got a feel for me, and he's like, okay, we'll get you transferred, and And I came up here, and and I talked to Chief Garros, and I told him, I said, look, I said, with me, you won't ever have to worry about anything, man. I say, I'm here to serve, do what I got to do, support the unit, and actually, I went from being a DSG in Meridian to a full-time AGR up here.
Man, that's nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that all transpired. And when I came here and I talked to Chief Garros, and I was like, hey, I want to be the chief boom operator one day. And he said, okay. He said, well, this is what I need you to do. And I did it. I went to school at night. I got all of my PME done in a manner of pretty much whenever I was eligible for it, I had it knocked out. I went to the NCO Academy in residence at McGee Tyson for about 6 weeks. And then once I made master, I enrolled in the senior PME, and I knocked that out within a matter of probably 2 or 3 weeks because I was doing night school at the time. So a lot of my courses corresponded with, well, the military had its own spin on stuff, but a lot of it's kind of like the same, communications, management, human resources type stuff. So I knocked all of that out real quick. And I because what I did was I was proactive because I knew what I wanted. Mm-hmm. So I was aggressive with my civilian education. I was aggressive with my military education, and I put myself in place so just in case when that opportunity did come up, I'm going to be ready. So versus waiting till the opportunity come up and then trying to react and trying to get all the stuff done, I'd had it done like 10 years prior.
What's your civilian education in?
So business management.
Okay. That's got to help you kind of juggle
Correct.
everything that you guys do down there.
There's a lot of human HR aspects to it, which is kind of what, I'm kind of doing now, recruiting, retention, hiring, training. So those are all kind of, aspects of HR. And that was kind of my area of my niche, my area of expertise, when I was getting my civilian education. So yes, it does help. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have it, but it's definitely a plus if you already understand stuff. So, in communication, that was one of my other niches, and so when I did communications at the NCO Academy, it was easier for me to understand it. So, yeah.
What would you say to folks that are thinking about getting into the Air National Guard? What advice would you have for those folks?
Well, it's definitely a good resource to have for finances. It's definitely a good resource to have for a support system. If you're patriotic and you want to serve your country, absolutely come in. It's a good tool to use if you want to go to school because they'll pay for your schooling. Right. After I think it's a year you have to be in. So you got the GI. You have the GI Bill too, but the state of Illinois pays for your education, after I think the first year, if that's still correct. So it's an avenue to pay for your schooling, and then just to meet a dynamic group of people that you can build lifelong relationships with. People. It's more of a family environment, so a family culture. So that's the one thing that I like about the Guard, versus active duty. Active duty. The two cultures are different. So, we're here, we're mission first, and you take care of family, take care of each other. Versus active duty, when I was there, it's more so about, career progression and, going on to the next thing, and to the next thing, and to the next thing. Yeah. Here, you're here. You might be here for 20, 30 years. Whereas active duty, you're hopping around from place to place to place to place. You may meet people and build connections, but when you're at the same place for 30 years, you build those connections for a lifetime.
Right. It's like a dream come true to be able to serve at home.
Absolutely.
It feels
and you're
great.
At home. Yes, absolutely. And the traveling aspect of it, seeing the world, seeing the different cultures, it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's the best of both worlds. It really is.
It is.
Being from being full time to this. What do you say to the people that, I don't know why a boomer would want to get out, but maybe a boomer wants to get out? And what do you say to them that hey, stay in. This is a beautiful job.
Well, it's funny you say that because I actually deal with that a lot. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. I've had a few occasions or upcoming occasions where I'm going to deal with those. It's kind of, depending on what people's personal motivations are and goals are. Some people, they come in and they serve and they want to use the military for school purposes and they just want to get out, and some people come in and they want to serve and they want to stay. So for those people who have their own personal aspirations in the civilian sector. You know, they might want to, you know, stay here, get their education, and transfer to New York, but they may not want to necessarily be tied to the military. So, you know, I try to give good reasons for people to stay in the military, but it's, you know, it's all dependent on, you know, what their own personal motivations are, and, you know, and what they got going on in their personal, you know, in their civilian life. So, I try to encourage them to stay in, because especially for those who've hit like a 10-year point, because I'm like, hey, you know, you're kind of a lifer now. It's like you only have 10 more years to go before you can get a full pension at 60 years old for the rest of your life, depending on, you know, when you retire. You know, medical benefits, because I say it's not right now is what you're thinking about. You want to think about when you're 60 years old and beyond, if we're all blessed to live that long. Because once those medical benefits kick in, you know, when you're older, that's a premium. You know, having good medical coverage, you know, and then you're having at least somewhat of a decent retirement coming in when you hit 60 for serving for 20 years or 20 plus years, you know, however long you decide, you know, you want to serve. So I try to get them to look at it from the aspect of it's not right, especially for the ones who've been in, like I say, between 8 to 10 years and above. It's like, it's not about right now. You want to think about later on down the line. So do you really want to give up, you know, 8 years, or you're 10 years from getting a pension once you turn 60 for the rest of your life? You know, I say, you know, those are things you want to think about, you know. So I try to use that as a psychological advantage to get for recruiting.
Sure. Yeah. What are your, so you met your goal, you became Chief Boom. Mm-hmm. What's next?
Well, next for me is to make sure that the people who are under me aspire to be the same as me, at least put them in a position to what's the phrase you say? You shoot for the stars, and if you miss, at least you'll be amongst the moon, or something like that.
Yeah,
something like that. To shoot for the moon. So, so my job now is to make sure that I put people who are of good quality and leadership standards, and people who are going to benefit the unit. I try to look for those potentials, and I try to find people and put them in different leadership positions, and try to capitalize on their potential to aspire to be where they want to be. So now that's basically my goal, other than, you know, I still have to meet my qualifications for being, you know, air crew. But mentorship is really, really, really big for me. So I try to aspire to get the best out of people and to get them to achieve their own military professional goals. So that's kind of my mindset now.
Right. I think you already
taking care of the troops, man. I got to take care of the troops.
How do you go about getting the best out of people? Because, you know, some of these guys don't think they're the best, or don't see themselves as the best. So how do you see that in them and go, look, you have it.
Right.
You just need to.
You have that potential, so you have to push them. You have to give them. You have to create opportunities for them to be in leadership positions, and you have to see how they're going to respond to those particular situations. You have to push them to get their civilian education. You have to push them to of course, your military education, your PME, you have to do all of that stuff. But when I see leadership qualities in people, it's just that it factor that you can kind of see in people, you know, that you can't really explain, but you just know it's there. So when you identify with people like that, or a quality in a person like that, those are the people that you want to be in key leadership positions, people who can think outside the box, you know, people that you don't have to stand over and give direction to, you know, people who are competent, you know, can derive at different conclusions based off of, you know, foresight. Right. You know, so those are the type of people, and those are the qualities that I look for in people.
You mentioned the officers. How do you see your role when you're dealing with the younger officers?
So for the lieutenants, captains-ish types, for me, part of my job is to try to mentor those guys and get them to understand how if they've never been enlisted, you know, just to kind of get them to understand, you know, how the enlisted structure works, and whatever else I can mentor them on, you know, because they're real young and impressionable at that age. So building those good relationships with them, to especially understanding things from the enlisted perspective, and as they go forward in their careers, you know, they can become better leaders, and they can understand both they can understand things from both perspectives, from an enlisted perspective and from an officer's perspective.
Chief Latimer has been our guest. Chief, we have you have that board. When is the deadline to get our paperwork in for the board?
I believe that's February the 17th of this month.
And then you're going to have the board that weekend.
Yeah, February the 20th, starting at 9 o'clock, correct.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks again to the 108th Air Refueling Squadron In-Flight Refueling Program Manager, Chief Master Sgt. Ari Latimer. The Chief Boom, thank you, sir, for coming in.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Anytime.
Love that interview with Chief Latimer. You never know what you're going to find out about somebody until you just sit down and talk with them. It's just amazing. An airborne, basically not an airborne ranger, but airborne infantry from a boomer. That's just amazing. It's amazing what our military careers can take us through.
With your look around the Air Force, I'm Staff Sergeant Britt Crowley. The newly established Office of Diversity and Inclusion is looking at the strategic impact of equity for airmen, guardians, and their families. The office evolved from the Department of the Air Force's Task Force on Diversity and Inclusion and is charged with identifying and changing policies and procedures that could unfairly affect underrepresented members of the Air and Space Forces. In a recent video for Black History Month, the 502nd Air Base Wing's Command Chief Master Sergeant Wendell Snyder talked about the challenges the Air Force has in its work toward diversity and inclusion.
The Air Force has more work to do. We have more work to do to get after racial disparity in the force. It's important to say it. I think it's important to call it like it is. And then our leaders at the highest level are going to do their part, but truly it's going to take everybody. The time is now. I don't think we can miss this opportunity to look at the processes that we have in place and find ways to continue to improve.
The emphasis on diversity and inclusion has already brought about a review of unit emblems and mottos, as well as tracking administrative discipline data. 10 airman leadership qualities are being added to the officer and senior enlisted performance evaluations. They'll be used as a feedback tool in addition to the Airman Comprehensive Assessment and will serve as a guide for raters and ratees. The 10 qualities focus on character and competence and fall into 4 performance areas: executing the mission, leading people, managing resources, and improving the unit. Force-shaping actions, made necessary by record retention levels, stand to benefit transitioning active duty airmen, as well as the Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard. The expansion of Palace Chase, along with some limited active duty service commitment waivers, could help the Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard by getting fully qualified airmen to fill their ranks. And that's your look around the Air Force.
Commander of the Air Mobility Command, General Jacqueline Van Ovost, gave an update on the KC-46, noting that deficiencies are being addressed. The AMC commander said she is heartened by some of the steps that have been taken now, and she says we're getting better at it within the deficiencies themselves. She noted that getting more KC-46s operational is about aircrew training, maintenance crew training, logistics support training, and equipment. She said, for right now, she said, I don't need to be in a hurry to take them at a faster rate than about 2 a month. She went on to say that when fully developed and capable, the plane will give us a lot of advantages over our current legacy fleet. She went on to point out that the planes can do multiple missions and provide battle space awareness. As of Friday, February 5th, more than 37,000 vaccinations have been administered to National Guard troops, with roughly 4,000 receiving both phases of the vaccine. Deployed Guardsmen are prioritized to receive vaccines at their deployment location. Major General Jerry Fenwick, he's the National Guard Bureau Joint Surgeon Director, said regarding infection rates in the Guard, we're about 2%, which is lower than the 9.3% national average. Guard members deployed to Washington, D.C., who fall ill are monitored at their hotels with the option to move to a hospital in the event that symptoms worsen. You can find all of our links on our webpage and Facebook at linktr.ee/126ARW. If you're watching on Facebook, you can watch this on your favorite podcast app. Also, if your friends don't have Facebook, you can tell them, hey, Watch it on your favorite podcast app or YouTube. If you want to pass along some information, you can drop an email to roll call at 126.arw.pa.mm.org@us.af.mil. Thanks for listening to Roll Call, a 126th Air Refueling Wing podcast focused on people, mission, and community. I'm Tech Sergeant Brian Ellison.